A Russian politician predicted step by step absolutely everything that we are experiencing right now on an international level. I'm discussing the Middle East and the start of the special military operation in Ukraine. Ultimately, this man didn't just provide analysis, but direct predictions. And now, with this extremely uncertain global situation, where the United States is attacking several states at the same time, let's listen to him for a moment. What is his analysis of this situation? What is his prediction? The United States is doing what it's doing. But what motivates these actions and who are they intended to harm? I'll leave you with one of the brightest minds, not only of the Russian Federation, but of the whole world. Stay until the end, because I assure you that the predictions of this man, this extraordinary geopolitical analyst, will truly surprise you. Let's see. This man, as I already told you, is practically a part of history in the Russian Federation. He is greatly admired, and his personality was quite distinctive, quite interesting. May he rest in peace because, well, he passed away not so long ago. He used to shout a lot, insult a lot. Some people said he was a clown, but he was one of the most successful politicians who, even when facing Vladimir Putin, always stood firm with his ideals. He was from the Liberal Democratic Party of the Russian Federation, the so-called Liberal Democratic Party of Russia, which is actually the abbreviation for the Liberal Democratic Party. We are talking about Vladimir Wolfovich Zhirinovsky, who was not only a politician, but also held a doctorate in political science. And this, of course, allowed him to make the most accurate contributions at all times. He is an absolute, truly historic figure in Russian politics, and I would say in political analysis at the international, political, and especially geopolitical level. Listen to what he's about to say. Before making these statements, Vladimir Wolfovich said, "Listen to me carefully because in 20 years you will be there," regretting not having listened enough to Vladimir Wolfovich, who is the same person, or not having paid attention to him. Why? He warned us perfectly about everything happening today. Watch out, you'll be amazed. This was precisely the man who predicted the special military operation. I mean, it started when he was no longer around. But everything he said about this confrontation between NATO and the Russian Federation turned out to be true. I have subtitled it especially for you. Let's take a look.
Vladimir Wolfovich was telling us back then how we should act. And we didn't act, so what's his plan?
They still need to occupy 7 Arab countries, defeat Syria, and destroy Iran.
With a show of force? What in this case is the trigger? Or rather the doping? Where does, as they say, the pressure against Iran come from? Arab countries, as if through forced democratization, actually want to take control of all the energy resources. Since the crisis has already begun, it's not in the future. America must weaken China in case Iran is attacked. Oil prices soar to $200 per barrel. The Chinese economy won't be able to handle it, and neither will the European Union.
That is to say,
with a strike on Iran, America weakens the European Union and China, but Russia stays.
How to weaken it? Refugees from Iran can only move north. To the south, Syria, a pro-American regime will already be established there. Iraq. They've been at war for years, but the conflict is now only in the north, mainly the Azerbaijani corridor.
You'll see. What do you think about these statements? I really think this man has absolutely nailed everything. That is, the blow that is being dealt to Iran right now is actually ultimately being carried out by the United States against China. In this sense, the Russian Federation, instead of being harmed, could actually benefit from these skyrocketing crude oil prices. And also, considering the previous blow dealt in Venezuela, where now it's unclear to what extent China will be able to buy crude oil or not. It has one of the few options left, which is, once again, to turn to the Russian Federation, a country with which it also shares a border. That said, most likely, even if the prices remain quite advantageous from the Russian Federation. To China as a way of showing gratitude, among other things, for continuing to buy its oil after the special military operation began, even after the United States sanctions. Also, but the price will eventually go up a bit because giving away its crude oil is not in the interests of the Russian Federation either. Nobody gives something for nothing. So here we'll see to what extent China will keep its economy strong. Because depending on how much the price of oil rises, Chinese production could become more or less unstable. And on top of that, there are also the United States sanctions that are now being implemented. Actually, they were already partly introduced against that country, but Donald Trump later removed them. Can't they now confront the United States directly against China? Well, it would be an absolute catastrophe on a global level, but indirectly, that's what's left. And that's precisely what the Trump administration is doing, among other things, to divert the attention of the American public from what's happening inside the country. Where indeed, following the recent case of George Floyd, this time represented by a white middle class woman killed by United States security forces, is drawing huge amounts of protests. Is this case also being used by the Democratic government to try to shake up the situation in the country halfway through the term? Meanwhile, Donald Trump has already entered Venezuela, and now he is getting ready to strike Iran. All of this is to harm China, but at the same time as well. And Vladimir Bush has also spoken about this issue to the Russian Federation. Although in the long run, of course, Russia faces a very clear problem in the form of Iranian refugees, who, according to this politician, according to Zhirinovsky, would go directly to the doors of the Federation, simply because they can only walk north. Iraq, impossible. They were already at war with Iraq and now also with Syria. She also said, look, this was years ago. You can tell by the video quality. The United States would have already established a friendly regime in Syria. And indeed, there he is, perfectly positioned. So this man really understood what he was analyzing at every moment. In other words, while the crisis that arose from an increasingly likely and imminent United States strike against Iran and the subsequent change, possible, quite possible, in fact, of regime within that country, it would result on one hand in this economic crisis or production crisis within China, and on the other hand, without a doubt, a possible, very possible. Additionally, a migration crisis within the borders of the Russian Federation. Both countries have been part of the signed agreements, helping Iran with everything they could offer at any given time. Thus, the Russian-Chinese electronic warfare, mostly, of course, from the Russian Federation, which is the country with the most experience in this fight against Western Starlink. It has made it possible to identify most of the participants in the protests, especially the organizers. Now, the internet in the country remains practically 100% shut down precisely thanks to these devices, without which the Irani regime would hardly have been able to achieve these results. There are no other agreements. That would be unthinkable. If we get a bit serious and realistic, imagining that China or Russia, in a hypothetical case, could end up launching a missile against the United States in order to defend Iran, which, by the way, it's not like they're defending themselves too much on their own. I mean, they're doing what they can. But also, I have to tell you, I have to point out that from Iran, well, at the time, they didn't really support it either. We're not saying this in terms of geopolitics, like interests. In geopolitics, like actions taken by each country according to those interests. But if we try to see it in terms of friends and enemies, supporting allies above all else, then Iran wasn't very willing to support Hezbollah either. When it was facing Israel and when it was supporting Palestine, it also didn't support Palestine itself or the Gaza Strip enough. It was the country with the most interest in the region. It is still the country that has practically offered its entire nuclear technology to the United States, because basically they are still participating in that nuclear non-proliferation program, which is already well known to be a spying program. And in fact, probably the American attacks against Iranian nuclear technology, against Iran's nuclear facilities, were carried out precisely thanks to the program in question. So, what we can't do is somehow defend a regime in terms of evil or goodness, especially that of the American empire. In some things, but then in other things, let's ignore the actions of these very regimes. If Iran had considered it to be in its interests, it would have acted more in the Gaza Strip, and it would have acted much more also in Syria itself. I would even say, without a doubt, regarding Hezbollah, that is in Lebanon and in Palestine, absolutely. However, it stayed on the sidelines and now it's dealing with its own issues. So we'll see to what extent it will be able to or not. But if we analyze the issue in light of these prophetic statements from one of the most important politicians in the history of the Russian Federation. I repeat, may Vladimir Volfo rest in peace. So, can we confirm that the Iranian regime is absolutely finished and that the United States will then go after other countries in the region, having to complete the task of taking control of 7 of them? Which ones will they be? Well, we will find this out little by little. For now, the situation is in Iran, and we'll see how it develops. What do you all think? Do you think these statements are accurate? Do you think it's a correct analysis, or well, just some statements? I haven't seen this man make a mistake. Let's see, because here it seems like he's either right or not in the case of Iran.